It's so nice to be here with you all this evening. It truly is. So I thought we might just take a couple minutes and just settle in. We can put everything down that we were doing before and just give ourselves full permission just to arrive here in this moment, feeling the freshness, the aliveness, even the gentleness of this moment. We may have been thinking about this or that, or running here or there. And so I invite you just to come inward and just join me in experiencing the gentleness, the goodness of your heart. You could even close your eyes and just take a couple deep, full breaths. And just feel. Feel what you are. The innocence of what you are, the openness, the spaciousness and the silence. How often we are simply feeling and experiencing the contents of our mind. But I invite you to feel, to experience the context of your beings. The context is the spaciousness, the container of what you are. Your mind is not just a bunch of thoughts. Your mind is the space in which thoughts arise. Your heart is not, simply a movement of emotions. But rather, it's a space of radiance. It's a space of inclusivity. And so I invite you just to come into this goodness that you are. To breathe deeply in the belly and just invite the belly to deeply relax. To say yes to this moment. Yes to what you are. This may be the first time this day or this weekend that you actually got in touch with yourself. So let's do a good job in this moment of giving ourselves full permission just to surrender, to be here, just to experience the fullness of your being. From head, on top of your head, all the way down, through all 7 chakra centers. The crown is open, the third eye is open, the throat chakra. Of course, you're relaxing the shoulders and opening the heart fully. Relaxing the solar plexus and the belly. The pelvis, the legs, the feet, the arms, the hands. And just inviting the fullness of what you are, simply to wake up. Simply to wake up. And so good. So I welcome you all here. It's, like I said before, it's nice to be here with you. And so I encourage you to stay with your direct experience. I'll make some announcements and get into the talk, but what satsang is truly about, it's about you directly experiencing the truth of your being, the fullness of your being. Oftentimes it's thought of as the teacher will show up and express the truth. And, she may do that. But what's important is that you feel the truth in you as you. If the teacher says something beautiful, allow your heart to wake up more fully and more completely. If the teacher invites you to relax, then relax. But it's all about you coming into your experience. That's first and foremost the most important thing. There's two real worlds we can live in. We can live in, this world of our mind where oftentimes we are lost in a fantasy of chasing this thing or that thing, or in the past or the present. So that's one world. It can be mulling over some old emotional pain or an argument you had with someone. You can be thinking and planning, about your day tomorrow. That's one that I was guilty of for too much of my life. But there's this other experience where we just simply stop, where we arrive here and we rest in our being. We rest. And by resting, we're letting go into the experience of ourself, into the fullness of what we are, the fullness. And so what is the fullness of you like? What is the fullness of this moment like? Is there any difference or any separation between what you are and what this moment is? And so, we all have this choice to be in our mind, to be in our personality, or to be in the fullness of ourselves. And if you notice, whoa, what is this fullness like? Well, it's always spacious. Because life is spacious, consciousness is spacious. It's eternally here, it's eternally now. It's quiet, it's perfected. And by perfected, I mean it's absolute, like what you are is whole, is complete. For many of you that I know and meet with personally, I remind you, you are a goddess, you are a warrior, you are beautiful. And the expression of innocence. And so when we step into the fullness of what we are, I invite you to look in the mirror and see this. And of course, I don't mean, your outward form, but it is in your outward form too. It's being perfectly you in this moment. It's being perfectly alive, perfectly intelligent. And I invite you to see the perfection of your heart, the holiness of your heart, the goodness of your heart. And so we always have this choice of these two worlds. Which world do I want to live in? The world of the mind, chasing this or that, or, basically wishing things were different. Or the world of your absolute fullness, your completeness, your wholeness, where you don't actually need a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a Ferrari to complete you. To complete you. And so anyways, I encourage you to stay with your experience. Excuse me. Just a couple announcements. This satsang is supported by donation, so big thank you to Lisa, to Ivy, to Taylor, to Butch, and everyone else who donated. If you would like to make a donation and support the Sangha with your generosity, you can visit my website, craigholiday.com. And there also you can find information about our retreat that's coming up. And it looks like about, I think about 20 days from now here in Durango. And so I look forward to those who will be coming. Be a small retreat, an intimate retreat, a time to go very deep together. A retreat is a time when we live in this present moment, when we live in the fullness of our being. If you've never been on retreat, I encourage you sometime soon. Give yourself the gift of going on retreat, even if it's simply a day in silence, a day without a cell phone, a day without technology, and it could be as simple as just sitting on a park bench, sitting in a park, for 10 hours, 12 hours, meditating, doing some yoga, laying in the grass and looking up at the clouds floating by in space. And we're resting in being. And so that's a form of retreat, which is a tremendous gift. There's been many times in my life when I just stopped everything. I just said this. I'm going to spend a day or 2 or 3 or 5 in the desert or in the mountains, or hell, even in Central Park. I've done that before. And I've been in New York City. No phone, no nothing. I just experience the fullness of myself, the fullness of life. It's fun, doing it at a place like Central Park, because in Central Park, it's like the ultimate experience of Maya. You can see, a wedding happening, and people playing football and soccer and baseball, and, couples falling in love, couples falling out of love, every species of dog imaginable, beautiful trees blowing in the wind, and ducks and ponds, and it's like a magical place, Central Park, in this big wild city, and you can just sit there and just watch the play of life, watch the stream of the thoughts just empty out of your consciousness. You can give yourself permission to merge into the earth and feel the fullness and the aliveness of your being. You can sit quietly like a Zen monk and close your eyes and act like, none of it exists. And simply go inward and dive into the depths of your being. And so, anyways, I encourage you, if you feel called, join us. I think it's July 18th through the 21st here in Durango. If you need a scholarship, I don't turn anyone away, so just ask for one. And we'd love to have you. And the beautiful thing about retreat, and especially, retreats within this Sangha, is, oftentimes they're really small. This one we might just have 10 or 12 people, and it's a great time. If you have questions, if you want to do some deeper work, if you're confused about something, if you're having a lot of kundalini or energy moving through your body, it's always helpful to have some experience, some help from an experienced teacher. I get these emails, often at least once a day, of someone telling me they're having a profound awakening, and they're just going about it by themselves, and it's been 5 years, and they're struggling with difficulty and pain and confusion, and it started off blissful and spacious, and then they became lost here or there, and don't let years go by, don't let months go by. Reach out and get some help from someone who's actually supportive, someone who you trust. And so I always did. I spent 20 years with my teacher. It's rare that I would go more than 2 days without seeing him. So I was overwhelmed with support on the path. To be honest, I don't know how people do the path without some good support. You can really spin your wheels, in the mud without support. And so anyways, I had a couple emails, but one question that Suzanne brought forward, and she said, Craig, it'd be a great topic for you to speak about. So I thought I would. And then, of course, if anyone has a question, please, type it in, the chat or the comments. And, or if you're on Zoom and you want to ask for the mic, I'd be happy to answer a live question too. I encourage you to not be shy. And so, Suzanne asked that I speak about thoughts becoming things. This power, this ability to manifest. Is it true? Is it a bunch of malarkey? Or how does it actually work? And, it's an interesting topic. It's something I struggled with for so long. And I'll get into my experience with it. But first, let me preface this, preface the talk. What I want to speak about is not really, how to make $1 million, although $1 million is always can be helpful. Sometimes it creates more problems than you had before. But the way I look at how thoughts become things is rather, if you feel into your heart, and if we look at what's our job here on planet Earth, how do I allow this heart, this truth in my heart to come forward in a manifest way? How do I manifest my goodness, my truth, my innocence, my power, my freedom and autonomy? How do I bring forth that which is good within me? This is what interests me. A new Ferrari could be fun for a short period of time. But, after a while, it's not that fun. It's not that fun. When I was a kid, we went back and forth between being really poor, and there were times when, my dad was making a lot of money. And so there was a time when we lived in a really big house. And he had to buy a big house because we lived in Connecticut, and my dad bought a house. My parents bought a house when it was, the economy was terrible, and then he sold it when it was great. So he made a lot of money. And so then when we moved again, he had to buy a big house so that he wouldn't get hit with capital gains. And I can remember we had a really big house and it was fun, but my mom was always like, I don't like all this cleaning and all this taking care of. And the yard was, it was 5 acres, and there's a lot of mowing grass and upkeep, and, and so be careful what you wish for. And so I'm going to preface the talk with this. You are made in the image and likeness of God. And so people get real confused about the image. They think that God looks like a man or a woman. And of course, God does not. She may manifest herself as that. But let's talk about the likeness of God. The likeness. God is vast, spacious, and empty, and so is our consciousness. God is unconditionally loving, so is our heart. God is indestructible and ever present, and and so are we. So are we. This is what we are made of. This is what our essence is indestructible presence. God also, as you can see, has the ability to manifest, and so do we. God was once vast, spacious emptiness, and she said, let's create some worlds. Let's create evolutionary worlds. And so here we are on planet Earth. Let's create evolutionary beings. And so we have the human race and, all the other races or species. We have countless worlds, and God manifests this. Everything that you look at in your home, someone had the thought and they brought it forward into reality. And so this isn't just like some silly spiritual mumbo jumbo. Everything, whether, like right now I see 2 microphones, cameras, big computers. I see these blue walls and, red doors behind me. It's beautiful, Buddhist Thangka. And someone envisioned the Thangka and then brought it forward. And so we all have this ability to envision something and bring it forward. And whether we buy it, whether it just falls into our life, we have this ability to create. Thoughts are radically powerful from one perspective. From a complete opposite, they are completely empty as well. And so this creates this incredible paradox. Most modern day non-dual teachers and the Buddha spoke about thoughts being empty. There's nothing behind them. There's no truth to them. And from one perspective, it's absolutely true. I could say, I'm going to die right now. And I'm not going to die. The thought is empty. The thought is empty. I can wish for $1 million, $1 million, $1 million. And that thought as well is empty. But now let's talk about thoughts having power. Because if you look at what a thought is, if you stop, with awareness and just look directly at a thought, say, well, what makes up a thought? Thought, like anything else, is made up of Satchitananda. It's made up of intelligence, peace, and Ananda, bliss or radiance, aliveness. And so say I have a thought, I want to be a teacher. I want to teach this class. It could be an empty thought that just comes and goes and disappears. But if I look at the thought, I'll notice it has a subtle intelligence to it, a subtle truth to it. And so if I want to bring this truth into reality, I followed up with words, I followed up with actions. I use the mind to envision this. And it was interesting, when I was young, I used to get this vision. It would just arise from my heart. And I was teaching, and I just saw, myself sitting in a chair, and I just saw lots and lots of people listening. This is a true thought. It's a very innocent thought, a very pure thought. I wasn't thinking that more people were better, or that would make me more holy or more, I'd have a fuller, bigger ego if more people showed up. I just had this vision of teaching before a lot of people. And so I invoked this. I brought it forward. I showed up where I was called to teach. And people showed up. Sometimes a lot, sometimes a few. But to me, it's just a movement of truth. I listen to the truth in my heart, a true thought. And then I invite this forward. And so I'm bringing the truth in me forward. Now I can also say this. I've taught in a room of one before, many times, and that one was me. And oftentimes I would sit in that empty room and I'd look up at God and say, God, what am I supposed to do? And she would say, teach. I'd say, there's nobody here. And then I would just feel this flood of grace. this flood of grace. And so for me, teaching very much is receiving. I'm receiving this holiness. I'm receiving this transmission. And so oftentimes I would sit in the room and I would just be there empty and then filled with grace, filled with light, filled with love. Now my egoic mind may say, why should I teach if no one shows up? But I'd look up at God and say, what do you want me to do? Teach. And so see, I would listen for the true thought. And so I invite you, if you're interested in manifestation, look in your heart and see, what is the true thought? What's the true will of God that's wanting to come through you? And then it's your job to bring it into reality. So you bring it into reality through thinking about it, through expressing it, and through following it up with action. With action. You know, I have a good friend and he wanted to make $1 million, and so he saw his line of work. He saw where he was living. He noticed what the people make, doing his line of work where he lived, made. He said, oh, if I live here, I'll probably make 70,000 or something a year. Maybe I'll move where there's wealthy people. So he moved where wealthy people were. And he worked hard. He continued to envision, he continued to build, he continued to create. And then it came forward. It came forward. I had a friend who, he wanted to retire by the time he was 30. He wanted to make $1 million too, and he did the same thing. He was working a corporate job and he saved some money, and then he invested all his money into a startup company. He worked incredibly hard at that startup company. He continued to envision himself as rich, as wealthy. And this was his truth. He followed it. And then by 30, he made a couple $1 million. And he invested that, and now he's quite wealthy. It's pretty surprising to me. That was true for him. That was his dharma. Now he has all this free time, and now he has this question of, I want to follow a path of the heart. Follow the path of the heart. So he built himself like a nice home with a little, like a little retreat center kind of environment, and a farm. And he takes the time to focus on the Dharma. For me, my thing was, I wanted to be enlightened. I wanted to be awake. And so I envisioned, what does that require? I saw lots of prayer, lots of meditation. And so I prayed, I meditated, I opened. And then God showed me what a teacher was. God showed me what a teacher was. And when I met my teacher, I realized, oh yes, I'm going to give my life to this. I'm going to fall in love with this. And so then the thoughts became the reality. The student became the teacher. But again, it wasn't just 1, 2, 3. I spent 20 years with my teacher, studying, practicing, listening, learning, making countless mistakes, and him straightening me out. And so here I am this day. He trained me for this. And what the beautiful thing is his vision for me, my vision for me, God's vision for me, all the same vision. And so you start to look at, where do thoughts come from? If it's a true thought, it comes from divine will. Now there's egoic thoughts. I've had all kinds of egoic thoughts. Like if I go into a motorcycle shop, I might think, oh wow, look at that shiny bike, and then look at this other bike, and it could be quite exciting for my desire mind. But I know it's not my truth. And of course I can go in and with credit buy, pretty much any motorcycle I want. But if I walk in that direction, I know that inwardly I'll be divided. I'll be chasing things I don't need. I'll be distracting myself from the truth. And so we all have this ability. And what I'm really interested in is not so much $1,000,000, but I'm interested in the movement of your heart. What's in your heart? What's in your heart? Aurobindo said it's be wonderful if spiritual people were in touch with their power, had good, healthy relationships with money, so that we could actually change the world. Change the world. And so if we look at, what money is simply a manifestation of power. And so power is a divine quality, just like compassion. Just like compassion. For me, I was highly interested in freedom. So I put my attention and awareness there, and my sense of freedom expanded. I was interested in peace. I put my attention there, and peace expanded. I was interested in compassion, and compassion expanded. I had all kinds of opportunities to love that which was within me and that which was around me. All kinds of crazy, conflicted states of mind and heartache and pain. And so compassion could manifest fully. And so I put my attention on, vast, spacious awareness, big, loving heart. And then I decided to discover this quiet strength and power. And what I realized is, in the avenue of quiet strength and power, I had a big shadow there. And my manifesting ability in regards to money and financial realities was not very good. I was very weak in this department. And even though, I read The Secret, I kept thinking about, having more money because I was so broke, most of my adult life. I realized that, I couldn't just think it and it would come into reality. The reason being is because I had a major wound around money. One, I came into this world, with, I still had the vow of poverty, really intensely. This is like a Christian vow you take or a monastic vow you take, left over from a previous lifetime. And so I struggled with money. I thought money was bad. I thought it was the root of all evil, all that silliness. And I felt myself of unworthy, I was unworthy to receive. Unworthy to receive money. And so I'd work for dirt cheap. I would oftentimes work for free. If anytime I was helping someone on a job and the job we went over budget, I wouldn't ask for money. I would just keep working for free and end up just not making any money. Some jobs would cost me money because I had this unworthiness inside and I was afraid to speak up. And so I had issues with the throat chakra, issues of unworthiness. And see, I forgot this teaching that you are made in the image and likeness of God. God is powerful. God is abundant. God is supportive. And so, I could open to peace and emptiness, but I couldn't open to financial abundance. And I always just thought about being poor. I identified with being poor. And that identification with being poor kept me poor to some degree. To some degree. And keep in mind, I don't want this to be a simplistic teaching, so I don't want anyone to use this to say, well, the people are starving in Africa, they see themselves as poor, and that's why they're poor. That's I'll call this a hellish misinterpretation of this teaching. Almaas says, there's people who are poor, and it's our karma, it's our job to support them, to care for them, to provide for them, through our abundance, to share our wealth, to share our divinity. And I love that. I love that, because sometimes this teaching of thoughts become things, we can use it as a way to judge ourselves or to judge others. Oh, he's an angry man because he has angry thoughts. He's a poor man because he has poor thoughts. We should not use any teaching to judge another. We use a teaching to help ourselves walk forward and come into alignment with a greater truth within our own consciousness, so that we can be a greater manifestation of divinity. And so this topic of thoughts becoming things, yes, it's an ability that we all have. The major reason most of us fail at this ability because we're not connected to our power. We're not connected to our truth. So oftentimes we wish for things which are lower truths. They come from ego, and so that thought has no power. We wish for things that we have no right wishing for, and by that I mean it's the wrong thing for us. God looks at us and just says, no, no. And so if you want to become a more powerful manifester, first you must have good, healthy self-esteem. Healthy self-esteem is like spiritual power. If you don't have healthy self-esteem, what you'll find is you'll be at the mercy of your mind. Good, healthy self-esteem means you know who and what you are. At the core of your being, you're a goddess, you're a warrior, not a victim. Not a victim of life. And like I was saying before, I had trouble manifesting because at the core of my being, I thought I was a victim, not, something great. Something great. And by something great, I mean divine. And so in order for thoughts to become things, you must know yourself as divine, as powerful, as holy. And then see what comes. See what comes forward. It's funny, when I was young, like 17 or 18, I just made this list of things I wanted to do. I wanted to travel to Europe. I wanted to follow the Grateful Dead. I wanted to, do this thing and that thing. And I just put the list up on my wall just as an experiment. And a year later, I saw, I achieved everything on the list. It was just like everything fell into place. Everything fell into place. When I was with my teacher, I wanted to travel to India, and I didn't have that much money. Next thing you know, like the whole Sangha came together, and they bought me a plane ticket, and filled my bank account with lots of money so I could go on a trip to India. It was beautiful. I envisioned it, and see, it was the truth. And so God brought it forward. God brought it forward. And so, so many of us, we live in an unconscious way, and we do great pain with our thoughts, great pain with our thinking. And, if any of us knew just the power of thought, I think we'd all be much more reserved, much more reserved. I apologize. I'm going to close my window for a moment. I have my neighbor's dog, Ozzy. He's making a little bit of a ruckus. Yeah, sorry about that. He's like the biggest dog ever. He likes to express himself. And so, one of the harmful things I've seen is, if you have really negative thoughts about yourself, really intensely negative thoughts, and you do them consistently, you can make yourself sick. I mean, we've all made ourselves sick just from worrying, Carolyn Mace, you know, she's a great healer. She said, boy, if you ever knew what one judgment would do, she said, it's like drinking a cup of poison. Drinking a cup of poison and what they do to each other. It's like we're poisoning the planet with all of our judgments, especially all of our political judgments right now, our religious judgments, our attacks of each other. It's horrid. And then we have unconscious thoughts, which, you know, can create a whole hell. I got up this morning early and I was out walking my dog, and there's like a pasture in front of my house, and I saw this cow out there, you know, actually a bunch of cows, and I saw a little baby cow, and I just saw, oh, this calf looked just so beautiful and innocent to me. And then I looked at the mother, and she was branded 7 times. And I thought, oh, what a horrid thing to do to an animal. I mean, God, it's horrible enough to brand a cow once, but you know, we human beings, we live in such an archaic way in the way we treat the animals and the planet. It's no wonder there's global warming. No wonder, you know, species are, you know, like whole species are going extinct each day because we have thoughts that are becoming things, but they're running out of control. And so for a farmer, you know, do we stop and think about the pain the animal feels when we brand it? And then do we do it again another 6 times? Like, my God, I about started crying when I just saw that cow. And they were giant brands, you know. I just couldn't believe it. I've never seen a cow branded so much. And boy, it really breaks my heart even now just thinking about it. And so, you know, this teaching of thoughts becoming things, it's not, again, it's not so much about, oh, what can I get? What can I get in life? What I'd rather you think of is, like, what am I creating? What am I doing? We have this great responsibility here on planet Earth. We can share from love. We can be awake and aware and learn. Like if you brand an animal and see it's in pain, you might say, oh, maybe there's a different way we can do this. You know, is someone really going to come and steal my cows? Do I have to put these animals through this process? Is there another way? There's got to be another way, you know. And now I see some people put tags on cows, but there's got to be another way. You know, just even with our diet, do I need to eat meat, you know, 3 meals a day, which is leading to so much global warming? Do I need to drive the biggest, you know, SUV on planet Earth? Do I need a gigantic house and be running an air conditioner and heater all the time for just one person or for 2 people? You know, one of the beautiful ways, like thoughts becomes things, is like with the garden. At our house, we're growing so much food now. It's amazing how much food we're growing. And so this impacts the planet when you grow your own food and you're not, you know, buying everything in a plastic box, in a cardboard box, and it's been grown in California, then shipped, you know, to Kansas, and then shipped up to Canada or whatever it is. It's just crazy, you know, the way food production is and how the whole world lives. You know, can you create something good? Can you create something beautiful? And internally, is your internal world beautiful and filled with love? You know, oftentimes I tell people, like I said in the beginning, you're so beautiful. And oftentimes they look at me and scowl, or they burst into tears. Always confused, like, okay, it's like they burst into tears because they're actually hearing it. They're letting it in their heart. They're receiving it. That's good. But it's also kind of crazy because, you know, I encourage you just to be open, to know that you're beautiful, to know that you're good, to know that you're innocent. And some people, they just put up a wall and they scowl back, you know, when I say, do you know how beautiful you are? Do you know how innocent and radiant and divine you are? Can you let that thought in? Can you wake up to the truth of your being? You know, I could say, you know you're a really bad meditator and you're never going to get anywhere on the spiritual path. Some spiritual teachers, teach like that. And, I don't find that helpful. I don't find it helpful. But my teacher, he used to say to me, Craig, if someone says something, nasty to you, look inside and see if there's any truth to it at all. Because oftentimes, inside we have an ego, which, can manifest on a level of, meanness and anger, and violence or rage or whatever, or addiction or something, laziness. So someone says you're not a very good meditator, you don't even try. You look inside and say, okay, is there some level of laziness and complacency in me? And now I'm going to do something about it. So you envision yourself as peaceful, you envision yourself as calm. And as you're envisioning it, you're getting in touch with those qualities. You're getting in touch with the qualities of peace, the qualities of freedom, the qualities of love. And with mindfulness, you can feel into your body. You can feel your thoughts. If you say something like, I hate myself, I'm so old. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I just couldn't imagine saying that. But if you said that to yourself, inside, you should feel like a bag of rocks. It should feel like hell. And when you feel that hell after having that thought, that's a moment for you to wake up and say, oh, no, I can't adopt that thought. It's too painful to believe this thought. I'm going to start to believe something that's true. I am good. I am divine. I am holy. I am awake. I am awake. You could even ask, like, what's here that is awake? What's here that is divine? What's here that is holy? And so say you're feeling incredible judgment, incredible pain, incredible heartache. And you asked, what's awake that's here? I used to ask this all the time. What's awake? Inside I'd feel pain. But what is it that's awake that's noticing the pain? Oh, there's something here that's free. That's eternally free. Okay, so here's 2 questions. Let's see if I can get them real quick here. Craig, should I think my way through life trying to manifest my thoughts, or should I surrender all to God? Do both, my friend. When you surrender to God, you're surrendering to God's will, and God's will is manifest. God's will is both absolute, and by that, Romaine, I mean it's perfect already, so you can feel and experience holiness right here, right now. What is within you, that's awake, that's aware, that's alive, that's free. Beautiful. And so you step into that surrender into God. And then what kind of thoughts does God have? Loving thoughts, where God is supporting, God is being compassionate. And so you manifest compassionate thoughts. So you love your daughter, Romaine. When you're at work, you love the people around you. You be kind. You be a force of love, a force of grace here on planet Earth. That's a beautiful question. So here's another one. This is from Brad. Craig, is awakening or enlightenment an aha moment, or is it many epiphanies and a continuous path? It's both. Both, my friend. So I don't like the word enlightenment because it connotes something static. Spiritual awakening is something that's lived in the present moment. So you may have an experience, like a knock your socks off experience. And I've had, about 5, at least 5 big knock your socks off experiences where my life was forever changed. And then I ask, well, how does this manifest in reality? Is this permanent? So I'd sit with this question of, is it permanent? And I would notice all the places where it was not permanent. And so then I made the path, over the next 10 years or so, about bringing this truth in a more permanent way, in a more practical way, in a more grounded way, in an everyday way. in relationship with my wife, with my children, with if I'm outside in the hot sun wrenching on a car, like I was under my van the other day wrenching in the hot sun, rust was falling in my eyes, and can I experience the fullness of life in this moment? Can I experience the bliss, the radiance, the aliveness, the divinity? I say this now, if I'm not feeling the goodness, the radiance, the freedom in my heart, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong. And so can awakening be permanent? Absolutely. Absolutely. But keep in mind, we do live in an evolutionary world. And so I want you to imagine, in an absolute way, the permanence is here, the perfection is here. In a relative way, like in your body, in your form, in your speech, in your relationships, hell, we are all an evolving edge. We all have a huge growing edge there. And I don't care if you're the Dalai Lama or Christ or, you or me. We all have an evolving edge. This is the truth. This is the truth. And so there's one last question here, and let's see if I can get to this. So beautiful question, Brad. Craig, I wanted to ask a question about guilt and shame. I know you have said previously in satsang that you used to be plagued by guilt and despair. I have realized it is something that's always running in the background of my life. If I take an action that I later deem to be less than perfect, i.e. human, she's plagued with guilt and shame. She goes into a pit of guilt, despair, and panic. This constant anxiety that I have done something wrong is exhausting. Is it a case of just letting the feelings be there and not buying into them? So like you are a selfish, bad person, but knowing you are not, I guess it's hard to find out which way to go in this space. Yeah, the big thing is the big thing that overcomes guilt and shame, if you struggle with these types of thoughts, is to come into your heart and to find any sense of goodness, any sense of innocence within you. The fact that when you feel guilt and shame, you feel worse, that shows that there's something there that's silently witnessing that actually feels good. But when it starts to believe in guilt and shame, you feel worse. Let me see if I can say that a little differently. When you believe a thought that's not true, you will feel like garbage for the sole fact that your natural state is innocence. If your natural state was garbage and you felt garbage, you would feel nothing. You would feel no change. And so your natural state is innocence. Your natural state is innocent, is goodness, is purity, is love, is radiance. When you believe a thought that's not true, your chakras will contract and you'll feel like garbage. And so that's telling you that there's something here that's witnessing and there's something here that's believing. What we want is the believing and the witnessing to be one. And by that I mean you're witnessing what you are and then you're believing in what you are. So you're witnessing yourself as good and believing, knowing, experience yourself as goodness. So the way we heal guilt and shame is through, yes, first stepping out of it. And oftentimes I like to step out of it and look, where did this guilt and shame came from? With you in particular, the one who asked this question, I have a great sense this came from your parents. This is not yours. It doesn't belong to you. And so to see this thought does not belong to me. It belongs to my ancestors. In particular, it's their wound, it's their karma. Most of our ancestors lived with tremendous guilt and shame in the past. And so to see that this thought does not belong to you, it's not mine. And then to become aware of what is yours. Like, what is your essential nature? and to give yourself permission to fall in love with yourself. And by that, I mean find something that's good, that's innocent, that's pure, and allow awareness to rest there. If you have a hard time awareness resting there, have the discipline to continually focus awareness on that which is good within yourself. And so that's one way, which will be highly necessary to heal guilt and shame and actually awaken into a different way of being. Another way is through the path of forgiveness. Forgiving yourself for being human. Looking at who made you human. Oh yeah, that's God. God made me human. So if you want to blame someone for your imperfection, your human imperfection, blame God. If you have an ego and it's giving you a hard time, blame God. Because what you are is a soul, which is pure light. You are not an ego. You're not a confused mind. God gave you all these things. These are things that came after the fact. After the fact. I love blaming God. Why'd you give me this ego, God? Why'd you give me this mind? And so I encourage you to forgive yourself for being human. To find that space of innocence within you and to fall in love with your truth, your goodness, your divinity. This is how we heal guilt and shame. This is actually how we wake up spiritually as well. This is how we let go. It's so much easier to let go when you're letting go into your goodness and letting go of hell. It's so much easier. If you're letting go of hell and just stepping into the void, oftentimes the hell will come back to you. But when you know yourself as goodness and you let go, it's like, oh yeah, I'm letting go into goodness. I'm just stay in goodness. I'll stay in my divinity. I hope that makes sense. So anyways, thank you all for the questions. It's so lovely to be here with you all. And like I said before, if you want to join us on retreat, please do. If you want to make a donation, there's details on my website. If you want to join us Wednesday night for meditation, another great way to connect and really to go deep, join us Wednesday night. So may peace be with you all, and may you all have a wonderful evening. See you next week.
Thank you, Craig, for listening to Craig Holiday.